Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, Al-Qaeda's stated goal is to bring down the infidel in Western civilization. I was the chief of counterterrorism in the Justice Department. It's clear the hijackers came from a certain background. We can't deny the fact that they were Muslim. Major Hassan, just north of my district in Fort Hood, was radicalized by al-Awlaki out of Yemen, and right next to my district. Killed 13 soldiers. I went to the funeral. I saw the boots, the combat boots, and the rifles. This is real. It's real stuff. And Ms. Patel, for you to say that these hearings do not rest on firm factual basis, I would say you talk to those families. And when you say we adopt a view of radicalization that treats religious belief as a precursor to terrorism, I would argue that we have to look at the obvious, that there is a religious component to this. It doesn't reflect the vast majority of Muslims, I agree. The vast majority are good, law-abiding citizens. But there are those within the United States, the enemy within, that do want to do us harm and bring down this nation and kill our soldiers and kill innocent civilians, like Daniel Pearl, who was slayed, as you very dramatically, Ms. Namani, testified to. 90%, as the chairman said, of these acts are committed by 1% of the population. So I understand your statistics, but when you look at the overall picture, I strongly disagree with your testimony, and I find it somewhat offensive to the victims. I don't know if you have any comment to that.
I think the one comment I would make is that, you know, I live in this country. I live and work in New York City, right by Ground Zero. I have 2 kids. They go to school every day. They take the subway. I'm a mother. I think about their safety. I, too, worry about terrorism. I, too, am not unsympathetic to people whose families die because of violence and terrorism. Of course not. But I think that the best way to keep our country safe is to use evidence to drive counterterrorism policy. And when I look at the studies and what they show me that using religiosity or using ideology as a predictor for who is going to become a terrorist and who is not simply doesn't work.
Can I just stop you on that? Because I think ideology is important. I think the moderate Muslim is the most effective weapon we have against radical Islam. I think we can defeat them on the battlefield, and we have, but we can't kill it. I mean, it's an ideology, it's a struggle for ideology. And that, at the end of the day, are we going to win or lose this? Some would say the war on terror is over, and that presumes that radical Islam is over. I would argue radical Islam is, unfortunately, alive and well, and it's an ideological struggle that if we don't win this, it will bring down Western civilization. And I'd like to get the other panelists' viewpoint on how do we win this war on ideology, and are we in fact winning it?
Well, sir, I believe that the Society of the United Kingdom, the government of the United Kingdom, has directly now confronted this real phenomena that you're talking about, that we also have nonviolent extremism. It is the rhetoric that Dr. Jasser is talking about that is in our mosques. It is the theology that is being exported from the government of Saudi Arabia into our country. And this is a very difficult conversation to be had, I know, because the government of Saudi Arabia is an ally. But I will tell you that as a woman inside of my faith, one of the hardest parts about practicing my faith is the interpretation of Islam that comes out of Saudi Arabia and tells me in my mosques here in America that I have to sit behind a wall, that I have to sit in the basement. Maybe sometimes I don't even get a room. And so from mosques from Seattle to Los Angeles to Washington, D.C., and the Upper East Side of New York City, I've been thrown out of those mosques because I've dared to believe something that the civil rights movement taught me, which is separate is not equal. And yet it is the theology that comes out of Saudi Arabia that makes that a practice in the U.S., and I would argue becomes a dangerous precursor for violence, extremism. It's not definitely a certain indicator, but once you go down that slippery slope of interpretation, it becomes dangerous.
See, my time has expired. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.